Hello and welcome back to the channel. This is going to be a video on Payload CMS, and Payload CMS is a headless CMS, which basically completely separates your user interface or your UI presentation layer from the backend. And from the backend, I mean the data, database, and all that other stuff, completely decoupled. We at Clearly Innovative have used other headless CMSs. We've used Sales.js a long time ago. We've used Keystone.js. We've used Strappy.js. We've evaluated all of them. Payload kind of popped up on my radar somehow. I've done some evaluation with that. And what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to show you how to quickly get a Payload instance up, create an admin user, create a regular user, kind of i.e. a user that's going to be logging into a mobile application website. Talking about some of the features of the administrative UI, how we're kind of handling authentication and saving the authentication token, building a Vue JS application, deploying the Vue JS application as a mobile app using Ionic Framework. That's what we're going to cover here. So please make sure you stick around. Please make sure you like and subscribe, share the video with friends, and let's get to it. Okay, so Payload CMS. The big header on the page is a CMS that works the way you do. Here's what I like about it. It is TypeScript. It is completely open source. They have a cloud that you can pay to get access to. Here's the cloud pricing. $35 a month, not too bad. Because it does give you access to the database. Get some pretty decent storage. It's okay. I have no intention of kind of using the cloud at all. We'll host our own instance. For the purpose of this application, what we'll do is we will just run the server ourselves on my machine. We will use the Docker compose file that you get with the when you create your project, but I'll just use Docker to run a MongoDB instance that we'll connect to. I'll run it all locally on my machine. Okay, so that's kind of the layout of the infrastructure. Let's see, what do we want to do? Let's just, like I said, I don't want to do a lot of talking. I want to do a lot of coding, and then if I get some interest, then maybe we'll dig a little deeper. So let's hop over to what is Payload. Payload closes the gap between an app framework and a CMS. It's basically Payload stuck together with Express. So anything that you do on your Express server, you can still do on your Express server, plus you get all the benefit of having Payload. What did I say? Out of the box database, store your data. It creates the REST APIs, the GraphQL APIs for all your basic CRUD functions. It supports authentication, create accounts, log in, forgot password, blah, blah, blah. This is pretty sweet. Access control to your data, document level, field level. It also supports localization, which is something that we needed to handle. It has a admin UI that can be completely customized. It's written in React. And I think those are really the kind of things that I wanted to focus on here. So let's get to building something with this. And like I said, if we get a lot of interest, I'll dive deeper into a couple of things. So where is it? This is why Payload. They talk about the configuration, how you set up everything in configure, collections. It's collections of data. I didn't dig into globals here. Didn't really dig into. Well, I did dig into fields. Fields are basically the columns in your database. We're not really going to dig into hooks too much here. We'll dig into access control in a later video. And yeah, let's get to the code. A little less talking, more building. So this is all you need to do to kind of get your server up and running. So this is where we are going to start. So we're going to copy this npx create payload app. Copy, let's go to where's my terminal. And let's run this. We call it payload 0 because it's our first one. We're going to create a blank template where, like I said, we'll start up our Mongo in our Docker after we create the project, because the project will provide the Docker Compose file for us. Okay, so everything's set up. .env files created. Let's see what we have in our directory. ls. So we have our payload project created. What we're going to do is we're also going to create our mobile application and our website. Well, our website / mobile application, we're going to keep it in the same directory. So we'll treat payload.cms, payload-cms as our top level project. So that's what we'll open up in Visual Studio Code. All right, now we're in Visual Studio Code. Let's kind of take a look at the files, kind of the project structure that we got. You have your collections, which we'll go through in a minute. You have your payload configuration, kind of how you set up your overall environment. And then you have your server.ts file, which kind of fires the whole thing up. And if you take a close look at this, it looks like an Express file. But we're focused on just quickly getting it up to get you guys excited about it. So let's kind of make the changes that we need to make. Here's our Mongo database URL. We're going to run this thing locally. Here's our payload. The secret, the secret that we use for our web token. We need to add another variable in here. We're going to add a variable for our URL. So our payload public server URL, and we're going to run it at http:/localhost, and we're going to run it on port 3100. That's because since I'm using Vue, some Vue projects will run on port 3000, and it'll cause some conflicts. So this is the way we've kind of separated it. So the first thing we do is we set our public server URL. And then the next thing we do is we go into our server.ts, and this thing by default is listening on port 3000. So we're going to change this to port 3001. Port 3100. And then we're going to go into our payload config, and up at the top, you can define your server URL. Remember, this whole thing is all TypeScript. So here you define the absolute URL of your app, including the protocol, blah, 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 blah. No paths allowed, only protocol, domain, and optionally port. So this is where we're going to use our, process.env. And then we'll take, where did this thing go? So I don't want any typos. Set our server, and we should be straight. So this should get the application running. So, oh, nope, I didn't set up my database. So what we do, as I said, it gives us this Docker file. If you look in a Docker file, it has a payload, which kind of runs the application. We don't want to run the application. We just want the database. So luckily, I'm using Visual Studio Code, and in here, I can go in and I can select services I want to start. So I selected that. Come on. And I'm going to uncheck payload, and I just wanted to start the Mongo service. So let's get that going, and let's look at the terminal, see what we got cooking down here. So it's kind of good, everything's set up. So let's let this run for a minute. So it has my database up and running. So let's see if I think I've opened up Docker. So let's go over to Docker. So here we have Docker, our payload container, and inside of that we have an instance of Mongo running. That's what we're going to use. This tool that I'm using is called Compass. It's kind of a MongoDB Compass. You get it from the MongoDB website. I'll include the link below. It'll allow us to see the data in our Mongo database. Right now, Payload only supports Mongo. It is on the roadmap to support other databases. You can poke around inside of the GitHub. Or actually, I'll include the link where they talk about the roadmap and kind of the approach you're taking to other databases. But right now, Mongo is what's supported. So let's go back and get our connection string. So if we look inside of our .env file, we have our connection string to our database. So let's copy that. And go back here, put our connection string in. Let's kind of save this as a favorite for now. And let's go back, and I think we should be ready to start our database. So let's open up another terminal window. npm run I need to, because remember, I'm going to put my website inside this same higher level project, so I need to make sure I switch into my payload directory, and so that is cd payload. Right now there's only one, so it'll just switch in. And now let's do my npm run dev. It'll start my dev server. It's loading it up with nodemon, as you can see, so it's monitoring it, and it'll kind of reload as I make changes. It displays the URL where we're running our admin application at, so let's just kind of click this and get it open. So here we need to create our user. Use this aaron@mail.com. Password. So I have my collection. Here's my user that I just created. I get change password and a bunch of other default features off of it. You can see here we have the URL for the API to see the user. This is the REST API, so if I click on that join, I get the user that was created. Payload gives you REST API. It also gives you GraphQL API by default. And so we can get to that. HTTP. So it has this leftover query from when I was playing before, but you can see if we kind of pop over here to the docs, it has created all the queries for the collections that I've already created. You get information on the schema for the collection that's already been created. And it's pretty dope. And so then, as you can see, we can actually query so we have a user. And let me go check and see what my user ID is. So let's switch back over here. Actually, let me find my users collection. So if I'm here in my database, see my user, actually let's pop this open again. This is my user ID. Let's copy my user ID. Let's go over to GraphQL. Drop my user ID in. Sorry, this is a string. And run this. Oh, cannot find field name. Oh, sorry, there's no name on user. I run this. And so we have a GraphQL API that we can utilize. So, pick your poison, REST, GraphQL, whatever you like. It provides it to you out of the box. Let's kind of close these two. Let's go back to payload. And so you saw quickly it gave us this nice UI and the ability to kind of create and edit these objects. So let's go and see how we did this in the code. So the users is a collection. And if we go to our collection directory in here, you see we have this file called users. And it's the slug, which is a unique identifier that they're using for this collection type in the database. By setting this auth flag to true, it basically gives you all of the default options for allowing objects of this type to log into the database. This use as title is set to email, which is the default field that you get. It says email added by default. And so what that does is when you look in the page here, this is the title. This is the email that's created there. So that's why it's appearing on top. And then you can add additional fields as you need. So the way that I'm doing this project is that, or the sample, is that the users collection is to log into the admin tool and the admin tool only. People who are using a website and mobile application, we're going to call them customers. Since we want the customers to have the authentication ability, they're basically going to, for lack of a better word, inherit all of the functionality that a user has. So instead of kind of retyping all this stuff, I'm going to just go over here. I'm going to make a copy, paste. I'm going to rename this customers. And then I'm going to go in here into my new customers object, and I am going to, I'm not a keyboard jockey, so I got to use my menu. Change all occurrences of users to customers. So customers, we're going to leave this slug as a lowercase customers. We're going to change this because we're going to create a field. There were no fields in a user object, but we're going to add some new fields. And this is pretty dope because adding the fields will create the schema for you, and then they'll just appear in the database. A lot less hassle. So let's go in here and create this object. And once again, because we have TypeScript, you can use TypeScript to help me kind of figure out what I need to do here. So I'm going to say the name of this field is going to be full name. Do I want to use hyphens? This is always the argument. Do you do the underscore or do you do the hyphen? We're going to go with the underscore this time around. So we're going to say full name, fields, name. Yeah, I know it's not complete yet, guys. The type is text. It gives us all the different types. We want it to be text. And then what else do we want on here? Label. So how's it going to display in the UI? And so we're going to say full name. Then anything else interesting? Like you could set the min-max length, all this other stuff. Save the JWT, so when it creates a token, do you want this field to be included inside of that token? We'll dig into more of that later. You can localize it. Just a bunch of cool stuff here. Like I said, we just want to get you excited to get this thing going. And so what we're going to do is we're going to say this is a required field. And just to kind of show some other UI components you get out of the box for this CMS, we're going to take the full name, and then we'll create another field here, and we're going to call it birthday. And we need that to be a date, and we'll just use the full name as birthday. Is it one word? Yeah, I think it's one word. And so now we have two fields on our object. You can see it's been updating changes. What we need to do now is we need to go into our configuration, and we need to say that we're adding another collection, and our collection is called Customers. Let's save that. Let's import it. And what do we got? Everything's reloaded. Let's go over to our admin tool, kind of refresh this thing. And you can see we have our customers down here. And let's create a new customer. And you can see we get our authentication stuff, our email and our password confirmation. We get our full name field, and we get our birthday. It's got the nice little calendar control that pops this for you. Didn't have to write any code to do this. This is, like I said, this is pretty dope. Also, this whole kind of UI can be customized. It needs to be done in React, but it can be customized. So let's just kind of get some information in here. Full name, Aaron K. Saunders, email, aaron@mail.com, password, save, customer has now been created. So now we want these customers to be able to authenticate, right? We want to do some more cool stuff. Yeah, we're already in it. Now, we'll save that for a later one. So we're just going to get the users created, users to log in, and the ability to create users through the application. We'll do some other interesting stuff in a later video if enough people watch this and respond to it. Okay, so my CMS is done. I have a content management system that keeps track of customers. Nothing amazing, nothing crazy, but the idea is to show you how easy that was done. As I said, I didn't have to muck around in my database here. Let's connect to my database now and see what's going on. And so I can go to my payload database. Let's make this thing bigger. All right, so there's my database that was created. Here's my users collection, so I can see my users that were created. Here's my customers. I can see my customer that was created. You can see it's pretty awesome. It can track login attempts. It can lock the account for you. All that stuff is built in out of the box. Like I said, also REST API, GraphQL. So backend's done for now. Next step is let's build a UI to kind of connect to the backend. So what I'm going to do is, as I said, I'm going to write this in Vue. I'm going to preface this right now because know there'll be folks that'll be wondering. I'm going to build a Vue JS application that leverages Ionic Framework to create the user interface. So this way I don't have to use Tailwind or anything like that. I'm very familiar with Ionic. And then also because it's an Ionic project, we'll then leverage Capacitor to package up the website that we just built, and we will deploy that as a mobile application on iOS. So that's what we're trying to do here. All right, so let's get back to our terminal. Where did my terminal go? I think it's behind this. There it is. Okay, so remember how I said we wanted to kind of keep our projects together? So right now we are inside of our payload. LS minus LA. We're inside our payload CMS directory, and so inside of here we'll create our Vue JS project. And so we're going to do Ionic start type Vue template. Is that template? We'll just start with this, and it'll walk me through the rest of it. So we're going to call our app payload app, and we're going to use a blank project because we want to just build some basic screens. Okay, our project's created, so now let's go back to our Visual Studio Code, and in here you can see we have our payload app. Let's open up another terminal window inside of Visual Studio Code. cd payload app. Let's do an npm install to make sure we have everything installed. Okay, and we'll also do npm run dev. Oh, yeah. Yes, let's do npm run dev. And we're going to open this up in a separate browser. So let me find my Safari. And so this is our basic Vue JS application that's running now. And let's go back to our editor. And let's look at some source code. Remember what I said? This is just Vue using Ionic. This code can work with Vue too. We have our main app entry point. We have views. We have a home page. We have our router set up. Right now it only has this one default route for home. We want to add some routes for create account and some routes for login. Trying to save some time in this video. I already have this code, so let me just drop that in. Okay, so I've added a couple of new routes here. We already had the home route. I've added a sign-in route and a sign-up route. Let's fix this name. So that's the only thing new here. So let's create these new components, a sign-in component and a sign-up component. Let's save this. Let's go to my views directory. Because Ionic, let's go over here. Oh, it's not working now. But to get some of the style that we needed, to get the header and, to get the nice clean UI, we need these components. You need to import all the components. So it's just easier for me, once again, to just copy and paste to kind of start off the two other screens, because then we get the structure of the pages without retyping. So what did I name these damn things again? It is sign up and sign in. So let's go here, let's rename. We'll do sign in first. Let's call it sign in page. I'm not sure if that's what I called it originally. And let's call this one sign up page. And we're going to do the sign in page first. So let's go over to our sign in page, and let's just call this payload Ionic Vue, Vue, and we will remove this. We'll remove this content. For those who aren't familiar with Ionic, think of it as, Bootstrap for mobile, for lack of a better word. For Ionic Framework, these are these components. So we have our header, we have our content, which is where we need to include the good stuff, and then everything needs to sit inside of a page. So that's kind of the quick and dirty Ionic. It has some class utilities, so like, I don't know why I'm lagging a bit here. Let's fix that import. Looks like I didn't, because I did this SignIn Page and SignUp page. So that's fixed. All right, now let's go to my SignIn page. And so for our SignIn page, we need our input fields to kind of capture that data. So let's just drop that in. Okay, so let's just kind of walk through what we have here. We have a list component to kind of hold everything. Then we have our form. We're going to need to create a function called handle login, which is what we'll call when you submit the form. We have our input for email and our input for password, which is the two fields needed to log in. We will add the ability to go to the sign up page, but for now, like I said, we're just focused on sign in. So you have a sign in button, and then you have a button to click account to go to the create account page. Now we need to add refs for our email, a ref for our password, and then we need to create our handle login function. So let's go down here. We're not using any of these styles, so let's kind of get rid of them because they're just here. And let's go into our script section. This is set up so I can start coding here. So let's do const email. And then we need our const. What was that? Handle login. Yes, handle login. And this guy's going to be async. And let's get our imports for. So we need to import all of these new Ionic components that we added. So we added an Ion list. We added Ion button. We added an Ion item. And an Ion input. Okay, so we have all our Ionic components added. We have our handle login added. The router. So let's get our router. Const router. There's a hook. Use router, which we get from Vue router. And now let's add our ref. So import ref from Vue. So we're all good. Router push. Oh, use router. Sorry. There we go. So it's like all of our errors are gone. Let's get some more space here. All of our errors are gone. We're set up. Let's kind of see how this thing looks. Let's run this again. So this is our home page. Let's go to our sign in, the GN. And so here's our sign in page. So we can enter an email address, we enter a password, and then we will sign in. Looks like I have some wrong. So the autocomplete is new password. Let's change this so we don't get that. Actually, let's just remove the autocomplete. Let's just remove autocomplete from both of them. Okay, so let's go back to the payload and let's hop down to authentication. So operations. So the rest. So we don't care about that. Let's hop to the login. So the REST API is just a post. We're going to do a post. We're going to pass in the content, and we're going to get a response. And you can see here from the response, we're going to get a token. And what we're going to do is we're going to need to save the token. We could use cookies if we're just going to stay at a website, but since we're going to deploy to a mobile app, we want to get the token. We want to save the token in local storage so that we can use it for the rest of our API calls. Here where it says collection slug, our collection slug will be replaced with customers because that's the collection that we're using for authentication. And then this URL will be switched to our server URL. So how do we want to do? Let's copy this code to get us started. So let's move over here. And drop down into our handle login function. And we'll put some code in here. Try. Let's catch. And we'll drop the fetch in here. So, okay, so we are going to log in, and we're logging into customers. And we are on 3100. And our post, we're going to get our email from our ref. And so this will be email.value. And this will be password.value. And this is all we need to log in. If we get an error, we'll say alert login error. Okay, let's through this together pretty quickly. Let's see if we're going to get the luck of the draw on the first attempt. Let's kind of split this since we're going to be going back and forth between the documentation and our website mobile app. And so my customer is aaron@mail.com, and I think my password is password. And let's do this. Let's get it, right? So const user equals rest.json response. But what we want to do is, because sometimes we only want to try to process it if it's okay. So let's say response okay. Then we're going to process it. Actually, it's probably easier to just do it the other way. If response is not okay, then we want to throw an error. Now, what I remember is that the error is you get an array of errors back. So we're not going to dig in too deep on how to process an array of errors. We're just going to take the first error, and that's what we're going to throw. So we get our response object. We pull off the errors object. We take the first error message, we use that as our error message, and then we create a new error object and we throw that error object. It gets caught and the message gets displayed down here. Otherwise, we assume that all is good. We get our user, and since we don't have any place to go now, we're just going to console log our user. Right? So let's see what we got. So here on a login page, it's aron@mail.com. And then our password is password. So we got our error, our login failed. Let's see why our login failed. Develop. Let's where should a JavaScript console. All right, so we're getting our CORS error. So let's do this first. Let's change this to localhost. Okay, let's try this again. All right, and so it's saying that it doesn't like localhost 5, if this whatever. So what you can do is we can now go in and add CORS to our server. So let's copy that and let's go back to our server and open up our payloads project and go into our server.t. Is it server.ts? Hold on, let's close the app. Let's go into our source. It's payload config, I believe. And so let's see. Yes, it has our CORS. It's an array. And then we also want to do our cross-site forgery. So let's, what is that, C? All right, and so let's go in here and we are just going to just duplicate the exact same thing. So now it should accept requests from host 5173. The other thing I realized that I didn't do is I did not change, I did change it to servers listening at 31. I thought I forgot to do that. Okay, so let's go back to our website. And let's see if we can sign in now. So it worked, but I missed an await somewhere. So let's go back to our code. And we are not in our router anymore. We are in our sign-in page. And this response JSON, I need to await for that. So await. And now let's go back. Reloaded, aron@mail.com. Password, sign in. So we got our JSON response back. Let's kind of get this up here. So you can see we got my user back with all the information on my user. We got an expiration date, and then we got a token, right? Now, if I look inside here, and let's go to my network, and let's find my login, and I see my response. And then if I look at my cookie here, you see I actually got my payload token for my cookie, right? And since I have my payload token for my cookie, let's add another screen. I'll show you what I'm talking about.